Hello and welcome to BitTech and this review of the Corsair iCUE 7000X RGB. This is Corsair's brand new case just released today, and it's the largest of the new 1000 series cases. It costs £300, $330 or €330, which is pretty pricey, but it looks amazing. So let's see what the specs and the details are and what it has in store for us. First off is the 3 tempered glass panels. On this black model they have a darkish tint to them, and I think that blends them in with the rest of the case very nicely. Behind them we have 4 140mm Corsair SP RGB Elite PWM fans. These have 8 individually addressable RGBs, and they also have Corsair's air guide technology. Now this is the vanes that sit behind the spinning fan blades, and they are tilted and curved to complement the fan blades and provide a better concentrated airflow. Those fans are controlled by a Commander Core XT unit, which replaces the Commander Pro. That's included with the case and is already plumbed into all the fans when you get the case. This can control all the LEDs and the fan speeds from Corsair's iCUE software. This new Core XT unit can control up to 12 RGB fans or 12 RGB strips. It is PWM only though. The previous Commander Pro could do PWM or voltage control, so you need to check which fans you're getting to make sure they can be controlled by that unit. It also has a USB 2.0 pass-through just in case your motherboard has a limited amount of headers, and is powered via a SATA connector. As well as the 4 140mm fans that come with the case, you can fit a further 3 in the roof for a total of 7. Like the 5000 series released before, this also has a side fan mount that can take up to 4 120mm fans. The entire case can take up to 12. So it's probably a good thing that they also provide this PWM splitter that can take up to 6 fans, as well as the Commander Core XT. As for radiator support, Corsair really got you covered. The front can take up to a 420 or 480, the side fan mount can take up to a 480, and the roof can take a 360 or a 420. You can house 3 360mm rads simultaneously or 2 420mm rads simultaneously. Maybe with a bit of tweaking we could get a few more in there as well. To help with radiator fitment at the front and side, there is a removable part of the PSU shroud, and then they provide this blanking plate to go in there and cover that off so you don't see any cables or hard drive cages down there. The case can take 3 2.5-inch drives and 6 3.5-inch drives, or a total of 9 2.5-inch drives, as they'll also fit in the hard drive cages. The 2 hard drive cages are removable for more space under the PSU shroud, especially if you're using the front or side radiator. The 3 2.5-inch sleds that mounted to the back of the motherboard tray can be removed and put on top of the PSU shroud if you want to show off your storage. To the rear of the PSU shroud is a window. You can customize that with your own graphic, or maybe an LCD screen to display hardware info or something, or you could just put in an LED strip there to illuminate your power supply. I'm actually quite surprised Corsair haven't fitted a little LED strip there themselves and connected it up to the Core XT. Just above that PSU shroud is a 3-slot vertical GPU mount. Now, as well as the one that's installed permanently in the back of the case, Corsair also provide another additional vertical mount to sit further back in the case where the normal PCI slots are. That's probably more suitable for air-cooled cards, with the front one more suitable for water-cooled cards, or even a dual GPU setup. As we move to the back of the case, we find one of the big features on the 7000X, Corsair's Rapid Route Cable Management System. This is a series of plastic channels that you can route your cables through that have holes to pass Velcro straps through and tie them down nice and securely. And just in case your cable management isn't quite up to scratch, there's also a hinge door behind the main rear side door that closes to hide them all away. The cable management features continue then through into the front chamber again, where there is a cable cover down the right hand side of the motherboard, and that will help tidy away your 24-pin SATA cables and fan cables and anything else that plugs into that side. Having unboxed, stripped down and then built the test system into the case, I've made a number of notes on exactly what it's like to build with all the features Corsair have provided. I'm just going to run through those. They might be in a bit of a jumbled order as I write them when I find them, but I'll try and fix that in edit, so just bear with me. While I was stripping down the case, preparing to build in it, I noticed there were lots of nice little touches throughout that just give it really nice little finishes. These include little labels that are printed on the case parts in various places, like the 7000X in the bottom left, the little Corsair label on the cable cover, including one that probably shouldn't be there. On the motherboard tray is stamped "Remark" above where they have the various sizes of motherboards that it will take, and that is probably just an instruction to stamp those into the metal, but they've stamped that as well. Anything that isn't screwed down was stuck down with masking tape or tied down with a cable tie. That's really good. It makes sure that nothing comes loose and goes flying around inside the box and damaging your nice new case. To remove the main side panels, the glass one and the rear one, there is a screw on the top hinge. I think that's a really good idea because it just keeps the door securely attached while you're moving it about. Not that they pop out of their clasps very easily, they certainly grip hold of it very tight even though they're plastic. The second hinge door in the back was already struggling to close when I got the case. Now part of that was for all the front I/O cables had been doubled up and bundled into that cable channel, but they promised 30 centimeters of depth of cable management, but when the cables in the case are taking up so much themselves already, it kind of limits your space for the rest of the power supply, fan cables and stuff like that. With both hard drive cages installed, it's not impossible to plug power supply cables into the power supply if you're using a modular unit. You have to remove a hard drive cage, plug them in, and then push them right up against the power supply to get the hard drive cage back in. Then if you do need both hard drive cages in, the only room you've got for stowing away like excess cable is on top of the power supply. That's only going to get worse if you're using the front or side radiator mounts. You're going to have to remove the front hard drive cage, and then if you need 3.5-inch bay space, you've got to keep that one closest to the power supply. So space is really at a premium down there. As I said in the specs, I think it's good that the fans come already plugged into the Commander Core XT. Not only that, but the fan connectors that go into the controller are numbered, so if you do take them out to rearrange the cables while you're building, you know which order they need to go back in. This is because, unlike the Commander Core unit that's found in the Capellix series of coolers, the Commander Core XT needs the fans to be plugged in sequence and sequentially from 1 to 6. Now, a funny thing cropped up while I was trying to completely remove the cable cover. It's in two parts and you can just remove the strip nearest the motherboard, but I wanted to take it all off and have a look. But the front fan cables run through holes in the largest sheet. No problem, just unplug them from the Commander Core XT and pull them through. But they are zip tied in the top corner with the rest of the front panel cables. So if you want them out of there, you're going to have to cut that zip tie, and it's in a really awkward spot to get to and will be incredibly difficult to get them all tied back up again. There could have been a better solution for that, maybe one of those plastic hose clips that sort of goes round on itself and hooks into a little latch. But using a zip tie is kind of semi-permanent, and somebody without a lot of build experience is going to find that incredibly frustrating if they want to use that side fan mount. The cable cover itself, I remember seeing the 5000 series case reviews, and almost all reviewers commented how difficult it was to get that cover on with the power supply cables in place. If you use the rubber grommets, you're immediately met with the surface and have to do 2 90s in short succession. If you're not using the side fan mount, obviously you wouldn't be with the cable cover, you can take the fan mount off and then pass it round the side. That gives you a bit of a better angle, but it is still incredibly difficult to get it on there. I did manage it both with the stock PSU cable and with the custom sleeve cable. The custom sleeve one was such a pain in the arse. I actually broke a cable comb doing it, trying to twist it into place, and it's kind of disappointing to see that Corsair haven't rethought that idea and given it a bit more height or a bit more wiggle room to get your power supply cable through. One of the things that makes it so incredibly difficult is you need to have one hand around this side of the case to hold the cover in place, and then have another hand round the back to screw it in. If it had a method where you could secure it in place from just this side, say just a little slide clip like you get on most rear panels on cases, just to temporarily secure it in place and then go around the back and screw it in. I mean, I can see why they've gone the way they have. The case has a kind of screwless finish to it, where in the main spaces you cannot see a single screw. It does look ultra clean, it does look so good when it's built, but building it can be a bit of a faff. So I've switched the cooler over to the brand new Corsair H150i Elite Capellix, which has a massive 420mm rad. The review for that should be on the channel shortly, if not already. This will enable me to show you the key differences between the Commander Core XT controller you get with the case and the smaller Commander Core unit that you get with the cooler. So in the Commander Core that comes with the case, you have the ability to connect up to 6 fans directly to the controller, and then a further 6 fans or a total of 12 RGB strips via a further RGB connection. I can show you where that is here on the lighting setup page for 3-pin lighting effects. So that this will only work for anything connected to this 3-pin RGB header there. The 4-pin lighting effects is anything connected directly to the controller, which at the moment is the SP140 Elite fans in the rear and roof of the case. If I go to the Elite Capellix, you can see that it doesn't have that separate 4-pin and 3-pin, because that can only control anything connected directly to that controller, and it doesn't have any off spurs for anything else. But the use of both of them are pretty much the same. You can reorder the fans there, although on the XT you do need to plug them into port 1, then port 2, then port 3, etc. Where on the Commander Core unit you can plug them anywhere you want. So here on lighting setup you can change the order and also the orientation. On the 8-fan LED series, that's telling you what you've got. If that was LED strips, it would say LED strips and have a little diagram for them. And then you have the color options, all the presets that come with the Corsair iCUE software, all the lovely colors of the rainbow, if you like such things. Let's get back to a nice bit of Corsair yellow. That will do. So then we have the calling page, and there are 4 stock fan profiles of quiet, balanced, extreme and 0 RPM. So 0 RPM will stop the fans completely when the computer is under a certain temperature and at very low load. The fan curves employed in iCUE are a lot more complicated than just a simple 2-axis curve. looking at things like temperature sensors on the controller, on the motherboard, CPU temperature and CPU load, maybe even GPU, but we don't get to see that background information of exactly how that works. Then you have device settings, so you can update the firmware on the controller, you might get access to new features that are enabled in iCUE, and you can also set the overall brightness, and this restricts it regardless of anything that you do in the lighting setup, so that's an overriding control. So that's just a quick rundown of, oh, one more thing. Up here you can save profiles to use, because you can't apply the fan curves by clicking on them down here. You have to set them individually on the fans, but once you've done that, you can then set a profile up for a particular fan curve with a particular LED color, so you know exactly what's going on and what kind of profile you have set. So now we've got that out of the way, let's have a look at some benchmarks and see how the case performs. As you can see, I've swapped the glass front panel for that of an airflow design model, and thank you very much to Corsair for getting that to me. I understand you pulled quite a few strings to get that here, so that's much appreciated. I did originally want that because I wanted to set up a comparison against results with a solid glass front panel using the front as an intake, the airflow model as a front intake, and then a glass front with using the side intake to see if using the side intake was an equivalent to a airflow front intake. Unfortunately, I counted on being able to put the stock fans in the side mount, and the side mount only accepts 120mm fans, so that didn't pan out. But we can still see how much the airflow and performance is affected by that glass panel. These results were obtained running a combined CPU and GPU benchmark, where I run just 8 cores on Cinebench and then a stress test on Firmark to get both the CPU and GPU under load and simulating normal everyday usage, but in a controlled manner. The CPU cooler I used was a Silverstone AR03. It has just a single tower and single 120mm fan. That was run at a constant 70% or about 1950 RPM, and the GPU fan set to a constant 70% as well, to make sure that everything was nice and consistent. So let's have a quick look through the details and see what kind of patterns we can pick up from the results. As you can see from this first graph, there are 14 different setups. I've also done some benchmarks using the Be Quiet Silent Base 802 that I use as a test bench, just so we have a little comparison there. Each case has been run in both its closed off form and then in its more airflow orientated form. So this first graph is set up in order of case setup, and then running sequentially through each fan profile that the cases have to offer. This shows that that is working well, with the more closed off formations being hotter than the more airflow orientated, and also showing that the higher the fan speed, the cooler the temperatures will get. From that chart, it also looks like the 7000X has a performance advantage over the Silent Base 802. But I have also recorded the volume levels produced by the average fan speeds, and this next chart will order the results by volume so we can see whether it's efficiency or just brute forcing it. Unfortunately, there aren't too many results that line up exactly, but we do have a few. At the bottom there are two 34 decibel results, where the Corsair iCUE 7000X beats the 802 in both GPU and CPU thermal performance. And these are delta temperatures as well, taking into account any changes in ambient temperature. And then we have three 7000X results and one Silent Base 802 result at 38 decibels, with the 7000X averaging at approximately 4 degrees C cooler on CPU and 5 degrees cooler on GPU. Now you may have noticed a strange set of results at the top of the chart there, where the in airflow formation, the iCUE 7000 comes out with the highest noise of 42 decibels, which is quite strange. You would expect that in airflow you would get better temperature results and therefore the fans would need to spin up less. One possibility is that we can see the GPU is running a couple of degrees cooler. Now that will bring some increased clock speeds and also some increased frame rates, which will then put more load on the CPU. If iCUE sees a higher load on the CPU, it will crank up the fans a little bit to counteract that. So that might be what's happening here, but it's a bit difficult to tell without seeing exactly what the fan controller is doing. So this last chart, just having a quick look at the performance of the H170i mounted to the front of the case with the fans in push. So with the cooler and the case fans set to balanced, we can see that the airflow front panel not only provides cooler temperatures for both the CPU and GPU, but it does it at about 80 RPM less. Although I was unable to test my hypothesis of whether changing the intake fans to the side mount would improve performance and be similar to that of an airflow panel, it does show that you do get a bit of improvement in performance using the airflow panel, but equally that even with the glass panel in place, it still performs extremely well. The gaps down the sides of the glass panel and the gap behind the glass panel before you get to the fan mean that the fans still have access to a decent supply of air and still put in a good performance. After having a chance to play with the case more, change the orientation and placement of the fans, put the all-in-one cooler in, use the two removable fan mounts, which are excellent by the way in that they are removed outwards from the case, so you don't have to remove anything inside in order to take them out and change the fans, which I think is really good. I was also able to reflect on what I was doing while building. I had to try and get it done really quick because I haven't had a lot of time to get through this review, and I realized that I am an incredibly slow builder. I will take days over the most simplest of builds as I try and work out the cleanest route for all the fans, even the front panel switches and audio, just to make sure that everything has a nice looking run and just reaches its destination without having to tuck things away. I will redo cabling several times until I'm happy, but I didn't have the opportunity to do that in this instance, and that's probably why I had a bad opinion of building with the case. It wasn't that bad, but particularly with cable management, I did actually cut back a lot of the build notes around cable management because of how I like to build and the fact that I recognise I've not had a chance to do that. There are still a couple of things that I don't think are brilliant. The cable channels themselves I think are far too bulky. They take up a huge amount of space. The front panel connections and the front fans take up the entire cable channel. There's no room for any additional cables. I think they could do with being slimmed down or it being made a bit bigger. Similarly, the cable channel at the top rear corner of the motherboard tray, it's not really big enough to get the PCIe cables, sorry, not PCIe, EPS cables down and attached. It was quite difficult to get them clamped down far enough so that I could get that cable cover back on, and that's only with an 8 and 4 pin. If I had two 8-pin EPS cables, I don't know whether I'd actually be able to do it. I'd probably have to remove the entire bracket and then you're left with nowhere to attach them to, just like I have a pet hate of every other case where the poor old EPS are left dangling with nowhere to go. Also, I did have a thought previously, and it's kind of been reaffirmed in putting the case fans up in the roof, that the cable holes above the motherboard tray are just in the wrong place. For the power EPS cables, the CPU fan cables, RGB cables coming off of all-in-one coolers or CPU blocks, you want the access holes right at the edge of the motherboard so you can get them out of the way and out of sight quick. But there's about an inch gap there, and they're going to be in plain sight. Then additionally, if you've got a fat 420mm rad in there, or a 420mm rad in push-pull, that's going to block those holes where they are as well, and it's going to be pretty damn awkward to get your cables through there. Despite that, there are a ton more plus points to the case than those few negatives, and they might be more about how I like to build, especially with cable management. I've always been a stickler for it. Even when you had the ugly power supply cables that were unsleeved and just in red, yellow and black, IDE cables, trying to get them tucked in tightly was an absolute nightmare. But I still like to have a clean interior, even if the back was a bit suspect. At least it was out of the way and you had a nice clean airflow. Babbling again. So let's have a quick run through the things that I really like about this case. Number one, especially number one, it is drop dead gorgeous. I kind of wanted the white ones. I'd seen the 4000 and 5000D in white, but having got this, I'm not disappointed at all. I think it looks stunning in black. The black tinted windows, they subdue the LEDs a bit, but I think that just makes it look all the better. I think the rough, really matte finish to the metal panels blend in with that dark tinted glass really well. And it's not just a big black slab either, fractal. There are tons of tiny little details in there that just a little bit of flair, not in your face, not really showy, just like the little Corsair badge on the top and the little yellow tab on the filter, the labels down on the PSU shroud on the cable cover. There's just little details everywhere that just bring a little something out here and there that means it's not just a monolithic mass sitting on your desk. As I said just a minute ago, the front and roof fan mountings being removable from the external of the case, I think is a fantastic design idea, and allows you to separate your cooling from the rest of your components. Same goes for that side mount. There's the inbuilt vertical GPU mount right at the front here for if you've got a nice sexy water-cooled card and you want to show it off. You've then got the rearward vertical bracket you can put in if you want to show off your air-cooled cards and not starve it of oxygen. You can have a dual card vertical set up as well, which might be a pretty cool idea, lead to some interesting runs. The PSU dust filter being removable from this side, I think is a really good touch. So it's really easy to clean. You don't have to drag it out because more than likely you're going to have this side clear so you can look through the window. Both the front and rear side panels have the hinges that are offset, so they're easy to get on and off. The cable cover panel, not so much. You've got to get that almost exactly 90 degrees to the case to get it back on, especially when you've got cables in the way. But that cable cover, again, pretty smart idea to get the cables out the way and hidden, help you push them in to shut that side panel. Although I do wish it was secured with something a bit stronger than magnets. Since the iCUE 7000X webpage went live, there's quite a lot of language on there that leads me to believe that this is meant as a showpiece case, and the practicality is sort of put in there as an afterthought, with phrases such as build your masterpiece, it's okay to show off, and show us what you got. It's no wonder the case comes into its own once you strip out a lot of those ancillaries. Overall, the Corsair iCUE 7000X RGB is packed full of really strong features, both in terms of its visual prowess and its build dynamics. If you can learn to take your time and build with it instead of against it like I was, I'm sure you'll be rewarded with a stunning system, and even with glass panels, one that performs excellently. You just might want to stock up on the window cleaner. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. We've got loads more reviews, mods and build logs on the way. If you like the review, make sure you hit that thumbs up and leave a comment below what you think about the 7000X. Do you have a 4000 or 5000 series case? How do you like them and what would you change about them? You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, links of which are down below. You'll also find a link to our Discord server there. You can comment and chat to us about your latest build or mod, or how badly England are going to be beaten in the football tonight. You can also find a link to our merchandise store down there, where you can pick up a sweet t-shirt, baseball cap or mug and show your support for the channel. But for now, that's it from me and the Corsair iCUE 7000 RGB. The review for the H170i Elite Capellix and its massive 420mm rad should be up on the channel very shortly, if not already, so make sure you go and check that out, where you can see how it performs on our test bench. Besides that, I'll be back very soon with some more reviews, so until then, take care, stay safe, and
stay on top but remain from the underground to the sea, and we all in the family.
See you then.